Hello, I am Centimus Prime, and here I will be showing you Gamma Zone, a alternate build I've made using the parts from the LEGO Creator set number 31058 Mighty Dinosaurs. So, first off, we will be taking a closer look at the build itself, and what better place to start than the head design. So, getting a good zoom in on that noggin of his. So I will mention that the build of the head does is similar to how the YouTuber Alan Yaps builds like the head for some of his alternate builds for this same set. But I will say that there are differences between the one I have built here and his. Most notably, the larger horns that I've used instead of the smaller ones, and the green faceplates. That way I can say that this head design is similar but different to how his heads for some of his builds looks. But aside from the heads, nothing else was copied or took inspiration of. I just feel like mentioning that because much like the Krogariah before him, he also has a head design that is very similar to how another YouTuber builds some of their alternate builds. Moving down to the torso, you can tell that his torso has facial features. That's intentional because I have made this build somewhat inspired from the anime Gurren Lagann. It's just something that looks fascinating to me. How a torso design can look like a face. And I can keep talking more about the torso design. Got the horns on the shoulders, kind of acting as eyebrows or horns, I guess. Got the Baraki eyes on the chest, making up the eyes. Got the teeth lining up the abdomen to not only fill in that gap, but to also add an extra flair to that ab crunch that I will be touching upon more when I talk about the articulation. He does have this round nose looking detail. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, and there's also extra details back here, behind the horns. There's extra little greeble sort of building to make the torso look more interesting from looking at it straight ahead. And we can, of course, turn Gamma Zone around to get a good look at the back. You can see that the torso is mostly the using the more beige parts. Like that, but that's to be expected. And of course I've attached, and of course I still attached like some pieces, like as much. I tried to greeble up the back of the build as much as I could, while still keeping it not looking too like protruding off the back or anything like that. And we do have like a set of clips here that aren't doing anything. We got some things here that are pretty much there for greeble. And that's totally fine. I personally think it still looks pretty good from the back. Now, turning him around again, so we can move on to the arms. So the shoulders, they do have I did make the sides of the shoulders a little bit spiky to keep up with the spikiness of the head and torso. But overall, it is a nice, like, simple looking, like, blocky shoulder design. And I'm happy with that. I am personally happy with. Moving down to the forearms. Again, they're not that complicated. They're mostly pretty simple. Something I do want to note is because of how I attached these parts, I like to imagine these as like his sort of like forearm mounted ranged weapons of some sorts. And it was like parts I've additionally add on to like try to give him a more interesting design. Oh, that part fell off. How did that happen? Now, now, on his left hand, he does have this giant claw that is seemingly made up of the like rib cage side build that the set has. And I will be talking more about that when I talk. No, I'm gonna talk about it now. So, I'm actually kind of happy with this. So, I did build this as a sort of like claw, like a big like claw weapon. It's like a big like claw. And I do like how this turned out. Not only because I wanted to give him a nice, like, unique melee weapon, or whatever, or however it's like pronounced. But I also like this because it is like this weapon build is made up of just the parts from that side build. So in like this sort of, so in other words, you can build this claw using just the parts here, and in turn, and thus you can build this guy using just the parts from the main build itself. Not only that, but if you say happen to have gotten more than one of this set and don't know what to do with the ribcage builds, you can like use the rib cages and convert them into more into more of these like claw weapons, into another claw weapon, and have Gamazone here be dual wielding these claws if one chooses to chooses to do so. I'm kind of happy with this. It's additional options, which I'm really glad that this turned out the way it did. Really happy with it. Now, moving from the arms down to the legs. The legs it did take me a while trying to figure out what I was doing for the legs with the remaining parts. But what I ended up with here, I'm totally fine with, even if it does look a little blocky and to be honest, a little bit jank. But with the parts I have available to me within this set, it looks fine. It looks fine. I am personally happy with it. So, the thighs, they do have some spiky detail, some spiky greebliness to the thigh. Not exactly down to the knees, but it's like extra bits of like character, as well as like little hints of that beige, like coming down and like breaking up all the green. It's nice. Moving down to the lower legs. Now it does have this like sort of like weird looking knee like joint type of knee joint where it does look kind of weird, but it does provide a good range of knee like articulation that I will be speaking more that I'll be touching upon more during articulation. And of course, continuing down, you do see more beige on the calves. And again, in the back of the legs, they do look slightly the builds of the legs, especially looking at them from the back, definitely shows that I didn't like had a whole lot of parts within the sets by the time I came to the legs. But I did what I did. But I am glad with how the legs turned out overall. They look nice. And then moving down to the feet, he does have very tiny. He does have thin, like long, feet with spikes protruding from the backs, and yes, even a little bit more of that beige going on. Do be looking good. Now, moving on to articulation. The head is on a simple ball joint, so you can look up that far. You can look down a little bit. You can obviously like rotate it 360, and it has a little bit of a tilt side to side. The arms, they're on the mixable ball joint, so you can like move them around. You can like have it. It has this sort of butterfly motion to it, but because of the way I built the shoulders, it also has this additional like hinge sort of like joint, so you can use that on top of the mixable ball joint to have his arm like come up like past 90, which is cool. And of course, you can still like rotate around on the ball joint and all that. Elbows are on a mix of ball joints, so articulation there is very simple. It does have clips for hands, and as far as articulation for the claw hand, it has 3 fingers. Like you can like hinge this back and forth. Each thumb is on like a hinge, and you can swivel each spike around on its connection points. Like you can, like there's posability options as far as the claw goes, which is cool. And the abdomen, as far as torso goes, it does have the ab crunch, which can also make it look like the torso face look like it's chomping down on something. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to add a waist rotation, but I am okay with, well, but again, I was, due to the limitations of the parts I had, I'm fine with this. It does have good range, still has good range, despite not having a waist rotation. Moving down to the hips are on these, CCBS style ball and socket joints, so his legs can bend up that far, can bend up, his legs can bend back really far, can of course split and rotate. The knee is on another ball joint and can bend up to past 90, which is cool, and can also like wiggle, has a little bit of wiggle room. And then for the feet, his feet can bend up, his toes can bend up, his ankles can like bend up like one click, and then you can bend it all the way out the other, like bend his toes all the way down in the other direction. Like very neat. Does have a nice range of posability, despite lacking a waist rotation. Now next up is size comparisons. And first up is a minifigure for scale. For like minifigure as that comparison. Doesn't even come up to his knees. He's reasonably tall. And then here we have the 2 previous alternate builds, that being Daitrution and of course Kroger Raya. Now that looks like a pretty cool trio. I like this trio. Here's a weird thing is, I often imagine like the 3 sets that these 3 builds are built from. I usually like associate like those 3 sets with one another, and so like as like inspiration to that, I wanted to like make a sort of trio, and it did. So like trio to like convey that, and it did take me a while, but I eventually got there. I eventually got this really cool, like somewhat Gurren Lagann inspired sort of alternate builds trio. Looks very nice. Look very nice. Now, moving on to transformation, because yes, just like the two alternate builds that I've just shown, he can also transform. So, to transform him, first we'll be taking off the claw. We will be rotating the head back. We'll be straightening out the toes. Let's see, bending. Next we're going to be like utilizing both joints at the shoulders so we can have his arms down like that. And let's see. Rotate the forearms like 90 degrees. You click the feet all the way forward. And then that's pretty much it for that transformation. Very simple. It's a very simple transformation, but here we go. Here we have Gamazone in his gunman configuration, his gunman form. Look at it. It's very simple. It is a very simple transformation. The legs just bend back, the head tilts back, and the arms go down and rotate. It's a very simple conversion. Not real, and articulation, it can be a little bit limiting in some areas, but it can still articulate. Oh, it can still articulate pretty good. It's a neat little thing. Not really a whole lot to talk about here. So we will be talking about we will be going to convert him again, because yes, I did make him into a somewhat triple changer. And so to make this guy a triple changer, first I will bend the toes all the way down. Then what's going to happen is that this spike is basically going to lock the torso in by going in, basically locking in there, going into this gap between this hinge and this stud. And you do that with the other side, and then you bend the toes. You bend the head up, you rotate the head and flip it like that, while also rotating the horns just a little bit so that to make it look slightly more aerodynamic. Excuse me. Then what's next is we rotate the arms up like so. Now we are trying to push these parts in so that they can still somewhat fit in the gaps. So they can somewhat fill in the gaps between the shoulder and the thigh. And then finally we'll be working on the arms, which can rotate, which you can rotate you can like straighten out, straighten them out, have it so that they're pointing back. So like this. As those arms go out like that. And with that, here is Gamazone in his like sort of flight mode. And of course, this is the one that has a little bit. This is the mode that has a little bit more of a transformation. You can, of course, you can like swoosh it around. Does look somewhat aerodynamic, and because of how the lower legs are built, and how the extra greebling of the back is built, it can stand on its. It can you can lay it down and have it stand, and have it sort of parked here. I do like this mode. It does look very neat. And this is actually a excellent time to bring up actually two things. One about Krogeraya and the other about Daitrution. So, for those who watched my Krogeraya video, you do know that he's also a triple changer, and that he also has a flight mode, just like our good friends Gamazone. But something I did notice is that when trying to convert Krogeraya into his flight mode, I noticed that I ended up realizing that by plugging the lower body into those two studs, it ends up putting extra unnecessary stress to this waist joint. In other words, I think I unknowingly made a illegal building technique with this one. So, and it was significant enough that over time I did had to replace this socket joint. So for those who want to build Krogeraya, just keep this little thing in mind, and if you don't feel breaking or putting unnecessary stress on your parts, I'd recommend to rotate the body up like this. Have it so it's right on top of the studs, but don't plug it in. And it can still achieve the flight mode and it can still achieve a solid enough flight mode even without fully tabbing that in, without tabbing that in. I just wanted to mention that for those who want to build this, because I don't want people like accidentally breaking their parts because of my builds. I feel like that would not go too well. And the other thing I want to mention with Daitrution is that because I made both Krogaraya and Gamazone sort of triple changers, I kind of wanted the same for Daitrution here. So I was like playing around with our good old friend Daitrution here, and I eventually came up with a third, like, sort of flight mode. And a good thing about this is that you don't even need to like add any additional modifications to it. It's a nice simple conversion. Now I will show you. No, so first step is to rotate the head down so that his faceplate is flushed with his chest. Then you rotate his waist around 180. You rotate his shoulders like this so that his shoulders are like lined up like this. That you then rotate his arms and bend them this way. Do the same with the other arm. Rotate these spikes upward so that they're pointing in the same direction as the eyes. Then what you do is you rotate the hips, bend the knees, rotate, like, flip that, like, rotate the foot, the toe, like, down so that it's like this. Have it lined up like so. Then do the same with the other leg. Then after you have that done, you can then rotate the arms so that they lie somewhat flush onto the legs, sort of like that. And then what you do with these like these extra limbs on the back, for the flight configuration, you straighten them out, bend this part this way, and then rotate it up like that, and then just do the same for the other limb. And then, like, bend it up like that, and there we have Daitrution's third, like, sort of flight mode. And I've also did an ends, in case you want to, like, lie Daitrution's jet, like, flight mode down. What you do is you take these extra limbs again, bend it this way, bend this joint like so. Then what you do is you basically have this so it's resting on the leg. Then you do the same on the other side. And then after that, you now have his flight mode with these external, like, back limbs acting as a landing gear. Isn't that nice? So So there you do have an additional, like a nice simple little flight mode for Daitrution, because that was the other thing I wanted to mention. And something else that I almost forgot, but so glad I didn't, is, here we go. Here are all of the parts that are left over after building a Gamma Zone. Not a whole lot of parts. We do have a couple of these CCPS friction adders that are left because this build doesn't really need that extra height. We have a couple of these like larger like pieces that were left over. Like these two like hinge pieces, one of the black clip pieces and one of the dark green like hinge pieces that were left behind, and a simple 2x2 like green brick. It's not a whole lot of parts left behind. Because most of it went to this build. And I will say, overall, I am really happy with how this turned out. It has a nice unique looking like robot mode. It has that like sort of gunman mode, and it has this sort of like, you have this like sort of flight mode. Very nice. And like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, you know, yeah, I guess that'll be it for this like build. If you enjoyed this alternate build and this video, consider to like and subscribe, and maybe even comment if you want. And of course, I will be posting again soon. Well, and yes, a video on how to build this guy will be coming up sooner or later. But yeah, if you like this build, consider to like and subscribe, and maybe even comment if you want. And of course, I will be posting again sooner or later.